We're joined here in the studio now by Fianna Fáil leader Micheál Martin. Mr. Martin, thanks for talking to us on the programme. Do you accept the findings of the tribunal as published today? I do indeed. I accept the findings of the tribunal, and obviously specifically in terms of corruption in Dublin County Council and the planning arena, particularly in the late 80s, early 90s, as detailed by the tribunal in relation to Fianna Fáil councillors, former Fianna Fáil councillors, former Fine Gael councillors, and I think one Labour Party councillor.
Do you accept the findings in relation to Bertie Ahern, where he is repeatedly found to have not told the truth?
Yes, I do. And I think the findings are very serious in terms of the corruption in the planning process, in terms of the findings in relation to Bertie Ahern's evidence, which I think is particularly serious as well, and in relation to the payment to Pádraig Flynn.
On almost every ground, I think bar one, the tribunal rejected Mr Ahern's account of these matters.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very serious finding in itself, and it's something that I think I personally have a great regret in terms of the fact that Bertie Ahern was not in a position, it seems, and I accept the finding of the tribunal. I think the key quote from the tribunal is, if I may say so, that they couldn't define the origins of the source of funding because Bertie Ahern did not disclose it to them.
Right. What then is the position in relation to somebody, in this case Bertie Ahern, who has a finding of this sort against him by a tribunal of inquiry established by the Dáil? What is their position in terms of remaining a member of the Fianna Fáil party?
Well, obviously, I did promise at the time of the order swift and comprehensive action in relation to this, and I'm immediately going after this studio to a meeting of the Office of Board of the National Executive of the Fianna Fáil party. They will be presented with a synopsis of the findings, which our legal people have been going through all this afternoon, because it is 3,200 pages. It's a large report. A presentation will be made to the Office of Board. It will then consider that report, and there are procedures that we have to go through.
Yeah.
But be under no illusion, Brian, the situation is, I regard it, extremely serious. Action will have to follow the consideration of this by the Office of Board, but there are procedures to be followed, and I have to go through those.
Is it tenable that Bertie Ahern can remain a member of Fianna Fáil, given what has been said today by the tribunal about his behaviour, giving sworn evidence to that inquiry?
I think it's a very fair question that you ask. I hope you appreciate the situation I'm in tonight. I know you would love an answer right now, but I did promise us swift. I think you will have, within the next short period, a very clear indication from the party in terms of how it intends to approach this. I have to go to the Office of Board. I think it's only fair that the officers of the party have an opportunity.
You would have something to say at that meeting of the Office of Board.
I certainly will, and I'll be...
And will you be saying to them that Mr Ahern should go?
I'm not going to preempt the Office of Board meeting itself. I think people will appreciate that. It's only 12 hours since the publication of the report. I do think it's important that people get their opportunity to be presented with a synopsis of the report. Some of them are working all day. The ordinary members of the party.
Well, others in your parliamentary party have already said that Bertie Ahern's position is untenable tonight.
Yeah, and I'll be, it won't be too long more before you'll have we will be issuing a detailed statement after tonight's meeting.
It's not, of course, just Bertie Ahern. The report, and indeed previous reports, identifies in effect a culture of corruption at the very highest levels in Fianna Fáil for perhaps a period of 30 years. From the late 1970s up to just a few years ago.
Well, the allegations and the findings of corruption in the Mahon report relate specifically to, obviously, the planning situation, which applies to Fianna Fáil, to Fine Gael party, former members of both parties, and one Labour councillor. In Moriarty, we had different allegations. In the Moriarty Tribunal, I think you have to look at both together, because they do highlight
and we could take McCracken in as well.
Yes,
you could,
and very bad for politics, and bad for members of our party. And my observation of that is these people who were identified in these reports, including in the Mahon report, betrayed the trust that the Irish people put in them, and betrayed the trust that members of the Fianna Fáil party up and down the country put in them as well.
But they also,
and that's who
it also reveals, sorry to cut across you, but it also reveals corruption really endemic and systemic within the Fianna Fáil party over a prolonged period of time.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, from my perspective, in terms of the membership of the party, there are thousands of members of the party. There weren't the Ardèche only 2 weeks ago, Brian, who are not in any shape or form.
I'm not talking about the membership. I'm talking about the people who led the party
it's endemic and systemic, I think
throughout the 1980s
it can be
and the
applied
1990s.
I'm just going to make the point to you that clearly I accept the findings of the tribunal. There are people in the party who abuse their positions.
Yeah. Ray Burke, let's just remind people, Ray Burke, corrupt, jailed for tax evasion. Liam Lawler, corrupt, jailed for non-cooperation with the tribunal. Pádraig Flynn corruptly sought and received £50,000 from Tom Gilmartin. Charlie Hoy paid £1 million, as we know, by Ben Dunn, among other payments. Albert Reynolds, in this report, shown to have taken no action when he was told of the allegations in relation to the payment to Pádraig Flynn. He turned the other way. Bertie Ahern, £200,000 above that of unaccounted payments. The last, three of your four predecessors implicated in this.
Unacceptable. And I would accept that, and I think we're going to deal with that this evening, and indeed in the next while in terms of the procedures we have to follow. And I think, without question, that the behaviour of those politicians, both in our party and in other parties, who betrayed the trust of the people, absolutely disgraceful and unacceptable, and has to be dealt with.
There's some stiff criticism in the inquiry report in relation to ministers who spoke out against the tribunal when Mr. Ahern was giving his evidence, and as we've been reporting earlier, they saw those attacks as attempting to undermine the conduct of the tribunal, and this is a very serious charge, to collapse its inquiry into Bertie Ahern, attacks launched by members of a government of which you were a member. Do you accept that finding?
I think, well, it's a comment in the introduction of the tribunal report. It's not in the findings section. I was surprised to see it, and I certainly never questioned the legality or indeed the integrity of the members. And I do think it would be inappropriate and
Willie O'Dea, who still sits on your front bench, complained about invasive questioning. We're simply asking, what's the purpose of deliberately going to areas which have nothing to do with the original purpose of the tribunal, according to party sources quoted by the Irish Independent?
But the difficulty for me in this is that the tribunal doesn't specify anybody. It makes the charge. It doesn't name names. There's a difficulty there. I think it's a very serious assertion in the opening part of the tribunal, but I have a difficulty in terms of identifying.
So that's it. No further inquiries or investigation on your part.
There's a lot of detail in the report about the other issues in terms of corruption amongst former councillors, which we will deal with, in terms of the issue in relation to the findings in terms of Bertie Ahern and the funding that he could not account for.
Well, as you've said,
and in terms of Pádraig Flynn.
An attempt to collapse the tribunal is a serious charge. Well, and it's been laid against colleagues of yours in government, some of whom may be people you still sit with on the Fianna Fáil benches.
But I think, in terms of the collapsing, I mean, there's no question of the tribunal ever collapsing or any attempt to make it collapse.
So you reject that? You don't accept that?
Well, I don't think. I would just have to make that point. I think prima facie it has existed for well over 15 years at this stage, with huge funding of €300 million. So I don't think, in that context, that it was ever collapsible or going to be collapsed. There were criticisms from time to time, as you know, about the length of time, the costings and so on, not just from politicians but from journalists and a lot of other people.
All right, well, there we leave it. Micheál Martin, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you indeed.